This is one for kids. It's a kids one. It's by Woody Guthrie. He did songs for kids. 173 is the page in the Rise Up Singing Songbook. Kids. Kids who can count to 173. It's called Jig Along Home. I went to the dance and the animals come. The jaybird danced with horseshoes on. The grasshopper danced till he fell on the floor. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jig along. The chorus is a little complicated. It goes like this. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Again, jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. You can yell at the screen if I mess up. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. There we go. Fishing worm danced with the fishing reel. Lobster danced on the peacock's tail. Baboon danced with the rising moon. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Mama rat took off her hat, shook the house with the old tomcat. The alligator beat his tail on the drum. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. The boards did rattle and the house did shake. The clouds did laugh and the world did quake. New moon rattled some silver spoons. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Chorus, jig, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. The nails flew loose and the floors blah blah blah. Sing that one with me. The nails broke loose and the blah 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 blah. The nails flew loose and the floors broke down. Everybody danced around and around. The house come down and the crowd went home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Faster with me now. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Slowly now. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. Jig along, jig along, jig along home. Jig, jigga, jig along home. That was that. That was that song. So, that was by Woody Guthrie. Kids, now you know a song by Woody Guthrie. Have a good day.